Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 62 here at the tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. Well, guys, as a special treat for you here on Friday night, I am going to give you a top 5 list for you guys. This is a request that was sent in by one of my fans, a Mr. Sincere McMichael, and he simply asked, what are my top favorite morphers? So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the top 5 in that list. A couple of things as far as ground rules on this. First of all, this is all completely my opinion. So I'm not going to go off any type of objective information, like, which is the more superior technology and which is better in the fandom and all that. I'm not going to really talk about that. I'm just going to give you guys what I think is great in a morpher as far as a piece of technology and its other functions, and just kind of spell that out for you as we go along. And I will also make the rule that I'm not going to count any Sentai morphers. These will just be in Power Rangers. And to that, if a morpher did something in, say, the Japanese version that it does not do in the American version, well, I'm not going to go ahead and count that. If this ability was actually used in Power Rangers, then that's what I'm going to go ahead and count it as. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and get to the list, and we will start at the bottom. And my number 5 favorite morpher of all time is the Wind Morpher from Ninja Storm. Now, the thing about morphers that I like that's happened is I like the wrist-mounted ones. I don't particularly like the two-piece morpher system, so you're not going to see the Magna Defender morpher, the Zeonizers on this list. For as cool as the Zeonizers are, here's the thing. Catherine would have morphed into Zeo Ranger 1 Pink if all she had to do was press a single button on her morpher, as opposed to having to press the two together. And in the Wind Morpher's case, that's exactly what you need to go ahead and do. Now, this one actually works on kinetic energy, apparently. You got to spin the little disc and get it going to activate it. But it's a single wrist-mounted morpher. You just got to go ahead and spin it. And much like the Power Morphers, the disc that's inserted at the top will determine what ranger you morph into, whether it's the yellow, blue, or red ranger, since this is only used for the primary 3 Wind Rangers. And it has the added bonus of actually being a weapon, which is what really got it onto this list. Normally, it's not as interesting in design, and it's not something that's really flashy, but it is efficient for one, and that's what I like about it. But it also doubles as a weapon, and very few morphers are like that. As you'll see, the Power Rangers will go ahead and swipe it, and, lasers will come out and attack the Kelzacs. And I think that's just a great feature of this morpher is that, it's simple to go ahead and operate, it's a single piece, and it's a weapon. So, not much more in that regarding this morpher. Again, makes the bottom of the list right here, and I trust me, the rest are actually much better. The number 4 morpher that I have on my list is the Delta Morpher. This thing can do so many things. Not only can you use it to morph, it's also used to call the SWAT upgrade. It is used as a communications device. It's also used as the judgment scanner, and it can also be used to trap the villains in the cards, which I think is one of the most underutilized pieces of Power Ranger technology. It's like, why wouldn't you just use that all the time, basically? Just like, oh, I got a blaster, but here's my morpher. Click, and then it's contained. I just think that that's the most impressive feature that it has. Although this isn't a wrist-mounted morpher, the fact that it's compact and small, but it can do all these different amazing things is what brought it up on my list. Plus, I do believe they use it to call the Zords, or if not, they at least call Dr. Cat, and then they call Kruger and all that to call the Zords. But what got it on this list is that it is versatile. A lot of morphers, all they do is morph. And I think the Delta Morpher is just simplicity. It just flips out, but it can still do all these cool things. So it's very useful. It's a great, I guess you would call it an offensive weapon, even though they don't actually use it like that. But yeah, I think it's great, and that's why it is made number 4 on the list here. Now, the next one might be a bit of a controversy. Number 3 on my list is the Power Morpher. Now, of course, it is the original morpher used by the Power Rangers. It is a single piece morpher, not including the coin and so forth. And beyond morphing, it really doesn't do anything. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. A lot of this is a nostalgic factor, I will go ahead and grant you. So it's not like I'm putting it up there because it is a great morpher, but okay, it looks cool. It's got the cool coin design that's individualized for each Ranger. The Green Ranger has a gold version of the morpher. It's just awesome. I really don't know what to go ahead and say beyond that. I mean, look at the thing. It just looks great. And the fact is, I like that it's the buckle on the Rangers. Because the thing is, a lot of these morphers will disappear and not be used when they are morphed. Obviously, the Wind Morpher is not one of them. The Power Morpher is definitely not one of them. And I think that's just... It's just a cool morpher. I mean, I don't know what I have to say to you guys. Why am I trying to convince you the Power Morpher is awesome? You already know the Power Morpher is awesome. But the reason it is number 3 and it is not number 1 is simply because, well, hey, again, all it does is morph. And the 2 that are above it can do other things which, override the coolness of the morpher, basically. And I will get to those here in just a second. The second morpher on my list is actually a tie. It is a tie between the Chronomorpher and the Quantum Morpher. Now, they are, in essence, similar morphers, but both have slightly different functions, and I thought since they are both from Time Force, I would go ahead and include them on this list here. First of all, the Chronomorpher, I like its security feature. It has a DNA lock onto it. It can only be used by a certain person. So it's obviously leagues above the RPM morphers where it can only lock onto one person forever, even if that person's a villain. But this has that security code in there. It's locked into a certain person's DNA the first time they use it, of course. And of course, that's a great security feature with it. So if villain ever got a Horde Morpher, they can't use it, but it's not like tied into their life force like the RPM or at least the power coins were later within the series. It's also used as a communications device, which is still good. And what's really cool about this is it does have a 3D hologram that pops up. So it's not very subtle, but hey, that's always great to have that 3D communication with somebody. I mean, eventually we're going to get those on our iPhones. So hey, that's a precursor right there. If Star Trek could come up with cell phones and desktops, then I think we've come up with the 3D communicator. In addition to that, once they are morphed, it is on the Ranger costume. It can obviously be seen down their wrist. And I think this was the first time that was ever done in Power Rangers, where the morpher was visible, basically. So you can use the morpher in this case to call out your weapons. So again, it doesn't actually shoot anything, but you press the button. Hey, here comes your big ass gun, here comes your swords. All that is controlled through the morpher, and I believe what it's supposed to be is it's supposed to be going through the time gate or coming out of the morphing grid. In either case, the fact that you just press and that's where your weapons come from, because it's a little odd in Power Rangers where they just hold up their hand, the weapon appears, but the fact that it comes from the morpher by just pressing the button, that's a good explanation for it. And again, it's very convenient. Don't have to yell anything, just press it, there it is. And of course, it's also used to call upon the Zords. That's the same thing as communication. But the Quantum Morpher, on the other hand, one, it's voice activated, so it actually cuts down on a lot of the problems. It can also be used to call the Battleizer, and it can be used to control the Q-Rex, the Quantosaurus Megazord. Now, I know that Tommy used the Dragon Dagger, and that's cool. A lot of times Rangers have to call out to the sky, but he just talks into it, says Q-Rex, and then it arises, and then you just got to give it a command, and it does it. The Q-Rex to my knowledge, does not have a cockpit. It does not need it, because as long as you have that voice box to tell it what to go ahead and do, heck, that's cool. So yeah, I like these morphers from Time Force because they're very functional. And I think the idea was, up until that point, is, again, they were projecting into the future in Time Force. What would morphers be like? And in that essence, the morpher was a combination of everything that had come before it, to where everything is centralized in that one piece of technology. Now, granted, that could be very dangerous should it get lost or destroyed or damaged or anything like that. But of course, that's kind of the risk that you run with anything. It's just better than a lot of morphers where you have to load things into it, which is why, the Gosei morpher and the RPM morphers, they're not on here, or the Megaforce morphers, I guess you call them, because I find it terribly inconvenient to have to load engine cells and have to load cards into the morpher. That just takes up time. But with this morpher and all the others, heck, all you gotta do is press a button or yell a command and you're good to go. Now, the final choice in Morpher is kind of a mixed bag for me. I definitely went on the list, but I was kind of debating it for a number of reasons, which I'll get into in just a second. But the number one Morpher, and my favorite that I think would be great to go ahead and use, and is great in battle, is the Mystic Morphers, obviously from Power Rangers Mystic Force. Now, it is a cell phone, yes, and it can function as a cell phone. Great. But it's not a smartphone. All it can really do is kind of dial in, dial out, and which is no big deal. But the biggest thing for it is that not only can you use it to morph and communicate, but you can use it to perform magic. And I've said this once, and I'll say it again. If you can use a morpher to summon pizza, that's an awesome device. And that's simply why I put it up on top of the list here, is because, again, the morpher is originally a magic wand. I think that's enough to count it, because a magic wand do so much. I mean, we've seen the Rangers use it for telepathy and telekinetic abilities, create pizza from nothing. They can do all this cool stuff with it, as well as morph to it. Now, granted, the drawback is you have to know the spell codes. That's what kept morphers like the Astro Morpher off of my list, just because, you have to enter a dang code to go ahead and morph. I think morphing should just be a single press the button, you're done, you're morphed. You don't have to do anything special to that. But in the case of the Mystic Morpher, I made the exception simply because of how powerful it is and all the great things that it can go ahead and do. So, hey, you want a pizza? You go ahead and call it up. You need a soda? You go ahead and call it up. You need a morph? Hey, you're going to go ahead and morph. Not to mention, it can also transform you into the Titan Zords. I mean, how cool is that the morpher will not only turn into a Power Ranger, but turn into a giant robot. You're not controlling the giant robot, you are becoming the giant robot. So I think that's what puts up atop a list. I know some people will think, well, hey, isn't that the same thing as like the Samurai Morpher? And yes, I will agree, is essentially the same as the Samurai Morpher. But I'll tell you what makes it superior than Samurai Morpher. As I said, you have to use codes in the Mystic Morpher. But in the Samurai Morpher, you have to know your kanji. If you don't know how to write Japanese characters, well, you're screwed. And I know what the symbol for fire is. I know what the symbol for earth is and heaven. But to draw them in a flash of a second, I mean, I couldn't do that. And yes, it can create constructs like horses and probably do all things Mystic Morpher does. But the fact that I would have to learn a completely different language in order to do that makes it very cumbersome, to where all I gotta do is flip out the phone and say, create a horse. With the Mystic Morpher, that's... I mean, I'm sure you have to enter a code for that, but I think it's easier to remember a series of numbers than to, again, have to learn the complete language. But if you know Japanese, hey, it's great for you, and I do not fully know Japanese yet. Hey, and maybe once I do, I might go ahead and change my opinion on it. But for the moment, I'm going to say that the Mystic Morpher is superior, just because it's more user-friendly for Western audiences, or at least easier for myself. And as I said, this is all opinion. You may differ on that, and that's great. And actually, I'd like to know what everybody's opinions are. So those are my 5 favorite morphers. Do you guys like them? Do you agree? Do you think that there is a better morpher out there? I would love to go ahead and hear your thoughts on the matter. So I apologize for this being a little bit short tonight, but Raptor was not available to go ahead and do this, and he said, hey, go ahead without me. I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. But next time we'll definitely have something a little bit longer, something a little bit more substance out there. But I definitely wanted to honor Sincere's requests out there. And for those of you who have already sent me messages about doing videos, I will get to them eventually. My plan is to honor every legitimate request that comes across here. And if anybody else has something they wish to have me talk about, send me a message, and I will get around to it eventually once I get everybody else's. But in any case, I do want to thank you guys for listening to me. As always, you guys have yourselves a good night, and the tavern is now closed.